Do you believe in climate change?
Yes. I don't know.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, I do.
Yes.
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 No. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
No.
Yes, I do believe that humans have impacted and have particularly impacted our climate, and it is something that is changing and we must respond to.
Do you believe in climate change?
Are you kidding me? I remember in 1988, and I remember this because of all the eights. In 1988, in August, the 8th month of the year, we had 8 days above 90, and it was a national news story. Most summers in the last 20 years, we don't have 8 days below 90. So don't tell me climate change is not happening. Plus, how can you ask a question like that when the World Weather Service has shown the data to show that our temperature has risen by 1.5 degrees over the last 30 years?
In America, climate change denial has prevented progress towards the turnaround of its effects on the environment. In today's society, climate change has become more of a political topic rather than what should be a discussion of the environmental effects that are at stake. Climate change denial can be found everywhere, from political figures
It'll start getting cooler. You just watch.
to students.
No.
Here to help explain the different kinds of climate change denial, I have with me Professor Brian Peterson. Brian teaches geology at Northern Arizona University. Now before we start, I would like to briefly apologize for the internet connection, but you can still hear his voice.
They see the problem based on the evidence and are willing to put in the kinds of interventions to address it, or if they want to pretend either that climate change isn't happening, which is outright denial, or pretend that climate change is just a technical problem we could fix with new technology, which of course is also living in denial because technology will not fix this problem.
Right. Now that you understand the different types of people that deny climate change, we can really get into the good stuff. Now, a major way that we have been denying climate change is that we think that climate change has been individually driven. This is simply not true, and I have Brian Peterson with some great points to debunk this. What do you think that most people get wrong about climate change?
There's quite a few things actually, and I'll just stick with the couple that I think are the most important. Most people think if you, as an individual, just recycle and take the bus occasionally, everything's going to be fine. Nothing could be further from the truth. Mm-hmm. They think that climate change is caused mostly by individual actions. All you have to do is look at 2020, in which in the March of 2020, that's when the lockdown globally occurred. People were living at home. They weren't going out. So the economic activity of individuals went way down. 2020 had the highest levels of greenhouse gas emissions we've ever recorded. So there's no direct correlation between individual actions and carbon emissions. It's the way our society is organized. It's the energy production and the focus on putting forth as much effort as possible to expand the economy at all times that's causing energy use as well as carbon emissions. That's just empirical based on evidence.
Yes, you heard him right. Even with everyone staying home and not going out nearly as much as we used to, greenhouse gas emissions reached a record high in the year of 2020. So now we know that climate change isn't individually driven, but driven by things like companies and industries. So you might be asking yourself, why haven't we brought it up? Why haven't we done anything about it? This is because the lawmakers are afraid to disrupt the pattern. Business is booming, and that's what matters to them. They are afraid to make radical societal changes because they are afraid it might hurt the economy or it might hurt the American lifestyle. What kind of societal reforms do you think would have to take place for climate change to turn around?
There would have to be a lot, and that's why it's so politically difficult. There have been many reports and analyses that look at specifically what would have to happen in order for emissions to be reduced. And that's really the sticking point, because what those evidence-based reports and analyses call for is unpalatable to a lot of people in society, especially people who are making a lot of money on the current system.
This point by Peterson proves that we have been playing a political game of hot potato. ignoring it so that they can pass it on to the next government leader so that they look like the bad guy in the textbooks. If we keep delaying it like this, eventually we'll run out of time. There's only so much longer that we can go without addressing it.
Widespread and intensifying. That is according to a devastating report by the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which warns that many human-caused effects are now irreversible. The UN Secretary General called the findings a code red for humanity, adding that it must be a death knell for coal and fossil fuels. NBC News correspondent Josh Lederman is outside the UN building in New York City. So, Josh, this is obviously a damning report by the UN's climate panel. Walk us through some of the major findings.
Well, Joe, one of the more alarming findings from this report, no matter what we do, our future is going to be warmer than it is right now. That's because, according to the more than 230 authors from around the world who compiled this report, we are going to see climate change that is now locked in, effects that cannot be undone. And even if we were to zero out emissions tomorrow, which obviously is not going to happen, we wouldn't see the climate start to stabilize as far as temperatures for another 20 to 30 years. But that doesn't mean that all hope is lost.
Taking action on climate change. The benefits of taking action now would mean that we would be more proactive for future generations to come. We would hopefully have a better economic situation, cleaner environment, and it would just be better for our future grandchildren and everyone to come.
How will climate change have an impact on our future? I think we're already in a state of like irreversible damage, and we really need to work on that and fix that now, because we're just gonna go keep going farther down this rabbit hole, and in the future we're gonna have nothing but synthetic synthetic everything, because we can no longer have access to any of nature's beautiful things that she has to offer.
Why do you think climate change is a problem?
I think it's a problem just because it's changing how our Earth is, and it's like killing species because it's making everything like inhabitable in either sense, like hot or cold.
Who's most at risk from the climate change?
I think climate change affects everyone, but people who can't like get up and move if like waters are rising by their places, they really have the hardest time with it.
Do you think climate change is a global emergency?
So I would say that it's definitely an emergency, and I definitely think that international organizations, the more involved they are, the better it's going to be for overall society. I know that the United Nations already has some sustainable development goals in place that they're working towards. So continuing to do things like that, or like the Paris Climate Accords, things like that. I think that international organizations have to be involved, especially when it comes to less developed countries that might need more direction or more help to industrialize cleaner than many of our modern countries have today.
Thank you, good answer.
Confronting climate change isn't about sacrifice. It's about opportunity, the biggest one we have to build a better future. I'm Michael Regan, EPA Administrator. Americans in every corner of our country are seeing and feeling the effects of climate change. Wildfires out west, back-to-back hurricanes in the Gulf Coast, extreme heat and rain in the heartland, and historic flooding in the east. Combating climate change, it's not optional, it's essential at EPA. We will move with a sense of urgency because we know what's at stake. We know that tackling the climate crisis is the single best opportunity we have to strengthen our economy, to put people back to work, and to build a healthier, more equitable environment for our communities across America. So here's what we're going to do. We will put environmental justice where it belongs, at the heart of our plan to tackle climate change. We will advance cleaner, more efficient ways to power our future. We will tap into our talented, diverse, and resilient workforce to get the job done. And we will be guided by a belief in forming consensus finding common purpose and fostering an open dialogue rooted in respect for science and the law. Together, we will create a world we can be proud of and ensure that all Americans have equal access to clean air, safe water, and healthy communities.
Things we could do to better our community: save water, use eco-friendly products, use filtered water, plant vegetables, recycle and reuse, pick up litter, eat less processed foods, walk more or ride a bike, and use cloth bags.
It's really nice today outside. Sure is. It feels like summertime already. I know. It seemed like just yesterday it was 32 degrees. Maybe because it was just yesterday. Ever thought about that? No way. Did that ever cross your mind?
Yesterday.
Dang, dude. It's pretty chipper outside today.
It is very cold.
When is it ever gonna get warm?
I hear tomorrow it's supposed to be 80 degrees.
80 degrees? It's 32 today. That's crazy.
That's insane.
Do you believe in climate change?
I do believe that it is a real, that climate change is real.
Do you feel you've been personally affected by climate change?
I don't think I've been personally affected by it.
Would you say you believe in climate change?
I would say so for sure. It's clear that, with how we go about, extracting resources from the earth, the climate is affected by it.
Would you say you've been personally affected by climate change?
I don't think so personally.
Do you think we have the ability to reverse it?
I don't know about reverse it, but at least, limit its effects on the earth.
So would you say you believe in climate change?
Yeah, I fully believe in climate change. It's just something that we need to start addressing quicker than what we already are.
Do you think we can reverse the effects of climate change?
At this point, I think if we start soon enough, we can definitely reverse the effects of climate change just through researching and trying to get better ways of using energy and whatnot.
Global warming has impacted you personally?
I don't think it's personally affected me, but I think in coming years it could, with just the more increasing natural disasters and whatnot.
Do you think we can reverse the effects global warming has had?
Maybe some of them, not all of them though. You can't really unmelt ice caps per se. Maybe a lot later down the road.
Do you think global warming has affected you personally?
Probably not very much yet, but it definitely will later in life, I think, because it's gonna get hotter. So.
Do you think global warming is happening?
Yes.
Finally, do you think we can reverse the effects global warming has had?
You never know. I won't be alive to know, but maybe, hopefully, I'm rooting for you guys.
Do you believe global warming has affected you personally?
Yeah, probably. Sometimes it gets hot, sometimes it gets cold,
Alright, do you think global warming is happening?
Yeah.
Do you think global warming is happening?
Yes.
Do you think global warming has affected you personally?
Climate change affects our ecosystems in a multitude of ways. These ways all contribute to the potential extinction of plants and animals living within these ecosystems, which would also result in the destruction of said ecosystems. Ecosystems will be affected by climate change because of things like sporadic rain patterns, the rise in sea levels, inconsistent temperatures, and newfound changes in behavior of heterotrophs and autotrophs. Sporadic rain will not allow plants and animals a secure access of water, while the constant fluctuations of temperatures will not allow plants and animals to adapt, and may even cause certain animals to come out of hibernation late or go into it early. This could also cause premature migration. These will contribute to the behavioral change in heterotrophs and autotrophs and will change the natural dispersion of energy in our ecosystems and throw it out of order.
And that right there, ladies and gentlemen, is just one reason why we need to stop the impending doom that global warming is putting on our beloved country, America.
At the beginning of this year, the world witnessed record-breaking summer temperatures, multiple wildfires, numerous floods, and unexpected winters. These are all, of course, the consequences of climate change. But climate change also impacts the economy. A report at the COP26 summit showed that the GDP of the world's 65 most vulnerable countries will drop by an average 50% by 2050 and 64% by 2100. If the planet heats up by 2.9 degrees Celsius, the study commissioned by Christian Aid also presented a possibility if the 2015 Paris agreements are met. It said that even if the global temperature rises are capped at 1.5 degrees Celsius in keeping with the most ambitious Paris Agreement goal, the same countries would take a GDP hit of 13% by 2050 and 33% by the end of the century.
The climate has gone through tremendous changes in the past decades due to greenhouse gas emissions, burning fossil fuel, manufacturing and industry emissions, deforestation, and more. Because of the disruption of the world's already depleting resources, the damage occurring to the world will take many decades to recover. Natural disasters are occurring more frequently due to the changing in climate. From the years 2016 to 2018, the U.S. endured $150 billion in economic losses from natural disasters. These natural disasters are causing stress to insurance companies and America's banking system, both being directly impacted from the physical risks of global warming.
How important is solving climate change to you personally?
Personally, for me, I think it's extremely important. A lot of stuff that I do in my own life is for advocacy for environmental change and finding a solution for global warming.
Agreed, and also it's also very relevant to our lives. You know what I mean? Because we're growing up in a time where climate change is really directly impacting our life, and I think a lot of politicians don't embody that same message just because they won't be alive. But
yeah. And it has such a big impact on the environment, not just humans, but just the environment as a whole, and ecology, and all that jazz. So yeah, I agree with the DD. It's definitely direct in our life too.
Woo! Right, thank you guys. Okay. Do you think that we'll be able to turn around climate change effects in your lifetime?
I think if we start making changes now, I think it is possible.
Would you agree that we've been ignoring climate change as a nation for way too long?
Yes, I think we have been ignoring it, and I think the longer we wait, the more worse of an effect it will have on our nation.
Yeah. Do you know any corporations that are combating against climate change?
No.
How do you see climate change portrayed through social media?
I don't.
Can you care to elaborate?
Yeah, I feel like I don't see enough about it on the internet. I see a post every once in a while, but that's about it.
Would you agree that having such frequent natural disasters, there is a stress on America's economic stability? I would say the answer is yes. I mean, you are looking at all the factors at play here. You have the disaster, then you have the individual pieces, whether that's timber, food, water, etc. You also have the impact, whether there's government assistance and the money flow as well. So all these things together cause a strain on the system, especially the insurance system. And that impact kind of ripples through the rest of the United States, the rest of the world, and on an increase in premiums everywhere else. From the years 2016 to 2018, the U.S. experienced 45 natural disasters, and the average annual economic losses from these disasters totaled $150 billion. This is a very substantial incline from a previous study from the years 1980 to 2019, when the average was only 6 natural disasters per year, totaling an average of $50 billion in annual losses.
Celsius. The country facing the worst GDP loss is Sudan, which in September was left reeling from heavy rainfall and flash floods, affecting more than 300,000 people. The findings from Christian Aid show that more than a third of the world's countries urgently need help to build up resilience if their economies are to withstand the onslaught of heat waves, drought, floods, and storms made more intense and deadly by global warming.
Although we see irrefutable proof that climate change is a prominent issue, we still face denial, a continuation of natural disasters damaging numerous ecosystems and communities, and a constant strain on the financial system. We need to stand up to make a change and a difference for our new generations to admire everything our beautiful Earth has to offer.